Welcome to a Carlton Witch Ramble. Now, as we've all been feeling, what the fuck is going on, right? What the hell is going on? We look back at some of the last few games they played, particularly that last one where they literally forgot what they were doing and like, what the fuck is going on? Okay. Now, Carlton has always had a very interesting energy. Okay, they've been on this very progressive story away from the unbalancing of like cursed energy. Now, whether or not you believe in curses, it's not necessary here. But when we're talking about curses, karma, energy, just a little side note for you. My belief in that is it is the give and take of energy. It is the give and take of the balance of energy. All right. So if the collective that we are a part of is overall putting out bad energy, we're going to get that back. We're going to get that back so that we can see where to be putting out good energy, positive energy. Now, the energy of the universe right now is very much about accepting authenticity. I came on board about a year ago. So please let me know anything that you might think of that comes up further back in the past that I might not have researched. I'm super interested in that. But you know, when I came on board, they had just begun their run of wins. And, you know, they'd had a terrible run up until then. And so they did all their run of wins. And then, you know, everyone was very happy with them. They didn't make the finals, but everyone was still very thankful for how they played. And everyone was kind of coming together. It felt like there was more of a coming together kind of energy. And part of the journey of the Carlton team, in my belief, is that it is attached to more than just the team. Carlton have one of the biggest fan bases in the league. They've got like 100,000 memberships or something now. And, you know, they are the team that has so many people having opinions about them. Like, here I am doing it, right? But there are many different like shows, many different podcasters, many different like social media platforms that you can find that talk about Carlton, right? They are connected to the people in a way that not a lot of other AFL teams are. And part of that journey is that everybody who is kind of attached to the Carlton energy is having a parallel kind of journey to them. Everybody is healing something that works within that space. And so this journey that they have been going through took everybody through this idea of learning to be in a position to unconditionally support them. That has become very interesting this year, this idea of unconditionally supporting them, like love and supporting them. And the reason that that's become very interesting this year is because we have been through a huge up and down in regards to being overly critical. Where am I putting my criticism? Am I just hating? Am I hating and saying fire people, or am I really being critical from a point of, you know, that unconditional love space where like I can still love and support you, but I can be very critical of what you've done wrong. And so I think we've experienced this year in particular a number of moments where the fans have had to kind of take a step back and look at that. The Essendon game in particular, where there was a lot of reminiscing around the way that the fans behaved last year versus this year. And it was a very kind of triggering moment for a lot of people to realize about themselves, about who they were a year ago and how they had changed, how they now have more control over their emotional spaces, how they're not so run by being triggered. And so everyone's been on this kind of similar journey as an individual, as a collective. And so this year, when I look at the energy of Carlton in relation to that, in relation to the collective and individual growth story, in relation to the way the energy of the universe has been guiding each and every one of us individually on our own story. And it really rolls out this story about not being authentic, not trusting yourself, trying to be something you're not. We are in a shift of ages. We are in the shift between two massively different generations. The older generations were very propelled and supported by the idea of discipline, meaning following the rules. The more you follow the rules, the better you do. okay? And you can look at that through lots of ways, right? You follow the rules, you get a job, you become the boss, you make the most money, you get the best houses, etc., etc. Success came through following the rules. We are moving into a place where the newer generations of people find their discipline only once they have been authentically understood, only once they find comfort and self-love from being authentically understood. And so having that energy in mind and thinking about the progression of the Carlton story this year, it makes me wonder a few things. What is going on internally that is on that journey as well? Where are we holding back from allowing these boys to be authentic? Where are we asking them to be something they're not? Where are we, as the collective team space, in that collective team space, where are we trying to make that team the same team we had in 95, the same team we had that won other premierships? Where is that overall Carlton vibe doing too much comparison? And where are they writing these rule structures that we are wanting people to fit into? Each human is its own puzzle piece. Each human needs to be accepted for the shape of that puzzle piece. And that is the only way the puzzle goes together. You can't have pieces that look like other pieces. That's not how it works. The puzzle won't go together. And so where is it in the Carlton conglomerate? Where is it that we are forcing puzzle pieces, that we are acting out of fear of being seen as different from what we used to be? Where is it that we are fighting authenticity because we fear what the collective will think about it? And that is a very interesting place to be, I think, individually and collectively. And, you know, I know these players' energies based on the sort of research I do, using the map of their psyche to the best of my ability without their birth times. Hello, somebody, please get them for me. But a lot of them are on this journey of trying to discover their authenticity in one way or another. And whether it's their authenticity of how they see their masculine energy, how they see their career, how they see their relationships, right? In one way or another, these boys are being pushed to find their authenticity and lean into it. And when we are dealing with that overall energy that seems to be acting from some sort of fear of being seen as something else, it's very interesting. And I had a conversation a few days ago in relation to the overall energy of the Carlton team when compared to the other Carlton teams, was very much that private school boy, right? Very much that private school boy kind of vibe. And meaning from that, you know, we need to be careful with how we act because we don't want to ruin our parents' reputation, the parents being the overall corporate side, right? We can't ruin our reputation. That's how we make our money, by having this good reputation, whatever that is for them, right? And so they keep trying to, like, you know, this worked in the past, and that's how we've gotten to like 100,000 memberships. And it seems like they are putting this pressure on to like not ruin the reputation, right? Follow the rules, and it's not going to work. You can't make people fit into this model of the old world, okay? It's evolve or drown. And I know I've said that a number of times, but it really is. And a lot of these players were born in the 90s or the early 2000s. And if you've watched any of my other videos on that generation, that is a huge transition age group of people. The way that they were brought up, the way that they grew into men, those times in the world are completely fucking different. And we can't keep trying to treat them like they aren't different. There are different ideals of what being a man is because of this generation of people. And, you know, these were the boys that when they were turning into men in the very early stages of them turning into men, for a lot of them, particularly born in the 90s, masculine energy was toxic. And how does that play out? I've got 2 sons, and I ask myself this question a lot. How does it play out for children, for young men who grow up in a world where toxic masculinity is shouted from the roof, where every time we are speaking out on a woman's issue, we say all men, where we can laugh and make jokes about choosing a bear over a man, where we focus on all men should be speaking out against X, Y, Z. And the whole focus, the whole responsibility of that is on men, even though we tell them to shut their mouths, even though we tell them that they're toxic when they're being masculine. We tell them these things when we need men to stand up, to initiate, to do what their masculine energy wants them to do in order to fight anything we want them to fight, whether it be inequality, whether it be violence, domestic violence. Any woman watching this, you know what? Men too. I want you to count on your hands 10 men that you know in your life, men that you know well. Count those 10 men. Then ask yourself, for each of those men, which one would you choose a bear over? For each of those men, which one would perpetrate DV or SA? Okay? Because we run around saying all men, when in reality, if we all sat there and thought about the men that we know, it's not all men. Just like in the world, there are dangerous, mentally ill, violent people that are men. There are also those people that are women, that are non-binary, that are identifying as whatever. It is a human problem. It is a human problem. When we sit there going, all men are toxic, masculinity is toxic, you know, men need to fix all of these problems for women, etc., etc. What are we really doing? Because we are not taking responsibility for ourselves. We are not taking responsibility for our part that we played in that. And all women need to do that. All women need to look at themselves and take responsibility for that. Literally all people in the whole entire world need to look at themselves and take responsibility for the part that they have played in both sides of this narrative. We think about these young boys that are out there playing, and we think about all of the ways that we want them to man up, all of the ways that we want them to, you know, come out there with fire and be men. But to a lot of these boys, particularly the ones born in the 90s, what does that mean? What does that mean? Because on one side you have people yelling, be a man, and then on the social media front, and then on the side of the Carlton corporate, the mummy daddy of the situation here, we have the don't rock the boat. Don't come out and say something that could fire you up. We're dealing with the era of social media where anything you say can be put out there. We're fearful of that. But yet be a man. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? And it seems like that is part of this authenticity that we fear. That the overall energy within the inside of Carlton fears. This idea of what if we let them be themselves? What if we let everyone here be themselves? What happens? Because change is hard for the energy of Carlton. They are very stubborn. They don't like change. Change is fearful. It's much easier to stay in your lane, to do what you've always known. There's stability there. So when change comes a knocking to rock that ship, they cling on. They cling on to what they know, what they've known. They cling on to past players, past games, how many premierships they've won. They cling on to, oh, this player is like that player. They cling on to those things. And it's from fear. And if it's not from fear, it's from ego. If it's from ego, let me tell you, that's actually from fear. So thinking about the way that these boys existed when they were turning into men, it makes them different. And the longer we try to push their authenticity into a box the more chaos you will see. Now, one of the other things I can tell you about some of the players on this team is some of them really do have a very high rejection sensitivity. Now, a lot of that is from the fear of what happens if someone sees me for who I truly am. They spend a lot of time wearing masks just in their individual lives. So if within the club space, we are trying to push them into another box, you're asking them to put a mask on top of a mask on top of a mask. And the energy of the universe says authenticity is required. And until you get that right, you do not get a reward. The boys that were born in the early 2000s, they are here to shake the very foundations of this world. And if we narrow it down to the Carlton team, they are here to shake those foundations, because they will not be pushed into a box of finding discipline through following the rules. They do not know how to do that. They do not have those energies. Their discipline energies in their psyches comes from being accepted for who they are authentically. And they will not see it another way. Another thing really worth thinking about is mental health. And as far as my personal experience, my work experience, and my research into this matter, mental health for men is a disaster on so many levels. It is a growing problem. We are trying to address it in the same way that we always address it, in the same way of the old, and it's not going to work. A lot of mental health treatment is for feminine energy. It's for women. And men, masculine energy, it is not the same. It's not the same, and it needs to be treated differently. The two energies need to be treated differently. So there is a huge problem right now with men being able to access mental health care that works for them, that makes sense to them. Because when we look at some of the rates of mental health decline in men, they do not follow the same patterns that we are used to, and you can look this up. A lot of men who are suicidal are not suicidal because they have a mental health problem. And we are treating everything like it's the same, like we've always been, and it's not that. It's not that. You know, they need a purpose that they can cling on to, and they need to be able to be authentically themselves. And until we can let them do that and move past this idea of a perfect narrative that Carlton seem to want, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. And I find it particularly interesting that the overall energy of Carlton is Taurus, is stubborn, is fearful of change, is focused very much on the shiny things, on the external, on the everyday. They are a Taurus energy that needs to adapt. And that is very difficult for a Taurus energy. This is the energy of making sure that you have enough shiny things to feel worthy of love. And this energy is on a journey to find its inner stability. And it will find that through allowing these players to be authentic. And that means getting rid of the ones that aren't aligned with that. And that is something to be feared, because some of our best players might not be aligned with the energy that we need. And we got to let them go. They can be somewhere better. When we look at teams that are being authentic, you can see them flying. And I'm going to name a couple, and I don't think you will be surprised. Hawks, look at them fly. There's an acceptance in their players' authenticity of building a newer journey, of being able to go on this wild ride that the energy is asking us to go on, that is helping them push through. Okay, they are in the energy of being able to initiate and go towards a goal. As long as they are let be free within their authenticity, they will achieve that goal in likely a very unorthodox way. Okay. The other team I want to mention here is Collingwood. Now, Collingwood were not always good at this, particularly this year. And if you wanted to get into the energy journey of the Collingwood team, we can look at it in two different parts. The part where they were allowing authenticity and the part where they were not. And you can see when they figured this out. There was a particular energy shift that was very important when Collingwood played Carlton, that you might have seen me talk about, which was about learning from your enemy. Learning from your enemy. Carlton did not learn the lesson that game, but Collingwood did. Collingwood did. Their overall energy is able to adapt. Their overall energy is being able to have an epiphany, to bring revolution, to rebel, and it allows them authenticity. And their whole team space is praised for being authentic. And once they figured that out, that's when they started killing it. And they went through that phase of not doing very well, where their whole overall energy was being challenged from external parties to be judged. There were a number of posts that I saw from Collingwood fans, from the Collingwood pages, that started to embrace the authenticity. Now, Collingwood have a particular gift, and that gift is named Darcy Moore. Now, Darcy Moore, his energy of revolution is his masculine energy and his ego. It's also the lessons that he came here to learn and the things that he inherently knows within his body. His ability to make change is second to none. To adapt is second to none. The way that he accepts who he is authentically and then builds relationships through an energy of healing is the reason that the Collingwood team have finally leaned into their energy by the end of the year. They didn't do it fast enough to be able to make it to the finals, but I think starting out next year, there will be a huge push for Collingwood. They will be in their prime next year. One of the other teams I think worth mentioning is the Bulldogs. Now, the Bulldogs have really been enhanced in being able to take risks, in being able to be super authentic. And they have got, from what I can see, a very solid and embracing internal culture. There's a huge acceptance in their internal culture of each other, of who each other is. The way that they talk about their teammates is very respectful, very filled with gratitude and very loving and very supportive. And that's why they have been doing well, okay? It's not hard to see. You don't have to believe in the energy of the universe to look across these teams and see this. Now, interestingly, Richmond and Collingwood share the same energy. Now, that has been under pressure to have a revolution, right? That overall energy of the team. And as you can see, Collingwood figured that out. They leaned more into their authenticity, and Richmond did not. And now, in true death and rebirth form of the universe, Richmond burns to the ground. All the old energies that were no longer aligned are leaving, so we can make space to bring in new energies. Now, interestingly, the Taurus energies in the league, Port Adelaide, Melbourne Demons, and Carlton. So, Taurus energies right now are being forced into revolution because they hate change, and they are being challenged to move outside of their comfort zone, which they also hate. So these teams, Port Adelaide, Demons, and Carlton, all of which, maybe not Port yet, have seemingly failed. So, Demons have failed on a number of tests they had this year as far as I'm concerned. And anyone who has seen me talk about Cozzy Pickett, that's part of the energy that I believe has caused them to fail. Not addressing the issue that is Cozzy Pickett and the way that he plays, let's say, and continues to accidentally cause injury, goes very much against his overall energy, goes very much against the sort of map of his psyche that I have. And he was not addressed. His behavior was not addressed. In fact, it was supported. And in supporting that, you get karmic smackdowns like the loss of other players being injured. You get an internal chaos that threatens to, just like Richmond, burn to the ground anything that is unaligned so that new energy can come in. So Port Adelaide are at the crossroads right now of this lesson. And we can see all of these conversations going on about poor old Ken and whether or not he's going to be removed, whether or not people will want him to stay. Now, will they adapt? Will they allow authenticity? Or will they fight it and burn? I guess we'll find out this weekend. Port Adelaide are in the energy that if they do succeed, they have a very high chance of winning the grand final, in my opinion. Now, Carlton are on that same crossroads that Port Adelaide are on. Only I'd say Carlton's one is made of ice. And we have an eclipse energy rolling in that I have been predicting is going to throw up some massively unpredictable things for the grand final. And that icy crossroads that Carlton are on is very slowly being burned, being heated by this eclipse. And if they don't choose to make the right moves, chaos tornado. And what are the right moves? How do you deal with this situation? And I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert on how to play the game. I'm not an expert on how to run a corporation. I'm not an expert even on mental health. My expertise is emotional and spiritual health. And emotional and spiritual health is very important to mental health. So important. And it is one of the things that we forget about in this world that we live in. And I predict that over the coming years, emotional and spiritual health advisors will be the first point of call for people struggling mentally. Because a lot of mental health issues are just emotional and spiritual. They just need balance. They just need self-introspection. So I can't speak on how to run a corporation. I can't speak on what plays need to happen. I can't even speak on what sort of training they need to do. Maybe a little, because I used to be a personal trainer, but I'm not an expert. I can't speak on the conversations that they need to have, but I can speak on helping everybody involved. And I would start on the ground with the boys, helping them understand the map of their psyche, their authenticity, their traumas, their fears, their addictive tendencies, their ability to build a relationship, their ability to adapt to change, what they're scared of, how those things affect them, how their unhealed wound stories have authority over the way they live their lives now. That is what I can speak on. That is how they can be helped. So many people are talking about them not having their head in the game. And I'm telling you right now, that is why they don't have their head in the game. I see a lot of clients. I follow the energy of the universe very closely. I have seen many maps of people's psyches. I have all of the maps of their psyches. And they are not standing in their truth. They are not all in the environment they need to be in. And they are not being empowered to lean into the weird. And that is what the energy is asking us to do. And as it asks us to do that, it brings up everything in the shadow, every trauma, every darkness, every repressed memory, feeling, everything. And if you are not working with the right people, you will go down in a blaze of glory, because this energy will burn you to the ground so that you are forced to rise again as a phoenix. And a number of these players are facing some heavy transitions right now. And I just want to give you a little insight into some of those as we are all trying to unpack the situation that was Carlton this year. So let's look at Harry. Now, Harry right now is really undergoing some heavy letting go in past versions of himself. Every version of himself that he has been since 2008 is likely coming up for him to look at, in ways in which he failed himself, ways in which he didn't act in his truth, ways in which he maybe thinks he didn't try hard enough. He's being asked to see how his overcritical nature of himself and his need to have his emotions validated, how those things have held him back from being his authentic self. He is also being empowered to lean into the weirdness and authenticity with which he builds relationships, with which he makes moves in his life and projects his masculine energy, and with which he takes risks. Okay, he's being asked to set a very strict rule structure for himself based on those things. Let's look at Charlie. Now, Charlie is in a deep questioning process about his authenticity. He is somebody who grew up thinking he was too weird, feeling misunderstood, thinking that nobody would ever be able to see him for who he was. He has this wound space around kind of knowing who he is, but not knowing how to project that into a relationship, right? And he wants to, he works hard to build a relationship. He works hard to communicate in a way that people will understand, because he does feel different, all right? The way he expands is different. The way that he takes risks is different. The way that he uses his masculine energy is very balanced. It requires validation from people that he's doing it right. Because of this feeling of being misunderstood and not being seen for his truth, he actively is looking for validation in how he shows up in his masculine energy. And how is he doing that? Born in 1997, when he was turning into a man, his idea of masculine energy was completely skewed and was in this transition, okay? He was taught things like, the journey is important, and that he needed to be a man. He was taught those things as a child, and he's trying to do that. And if he is trying to do that in this universal energy with the mummy and daddy Carlton vibe up there, trying to get him into a cookie cutter, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Everybody needs to face their demons. Everybody needs to work on their shadow. Everybody needs to understand the map of their psyche. Everybody. Let's look at somebody else. Let's look at Elijah. Now, Elijah is also not great with change, okay? He is somebody who is likely very stuck in his ways, particularly with his relationships, particularly with how he communicates, right? Very judgmental of his own emotional state, but also very sure of himself, very sure of where he wants to go, and can be very stubborn about that. Now, the way that he expands and takes risks is literally through people loving him, allowing him the space, giving him nurturing, understanding who he is as a person. That's how he wants to expand. Now, his masculine energy is very fast. His rule structure is very fast. So once he knows he has to adapt, he can do that. It just takes the comfort of feeling safe for him to be able to adapt. Now, he is somebody who was put here because his thoughts and feelings and the way that he does things is important for other people to hear. And he has a wounding around not trying hard enough. So with all this stubbornness and all of this self-critical mindset around trying to logically understand emotional states, and this potential to get stuck in an overthinking about how he presents his masculine energy and how he adapts his rule structure to that, there can be a huge fear of change if he doesn't feel stable. But if he is on the journey with Carlton, with where they're supposed to be, he is ready to adapt. He is ready to have change, and there needs to be an understanding of how to best do that through an understanding of the shadow, through self-introspection. So I put this out there to anyone, not just the Carlton team and the players. Please find a way to understand your psyche. There is something about having that validated, about understanding where your wounds came from, about seeing how accurate the map of your psyche, your birth chart, your natal chart, how accurate that is in helping you understand who you are as a person, in helping you understand what the universe is doing to you, for you, and what journey you are on. And it is my belief that the overall collective issue within the whole planet of Carlton is this same issue, is being fearful of what allowing authenticity looks like. Because we what if the negatives very easily. What if it goes bad? We know every single thing on that list. What if it goes bad? We very rarely what if the positive. What if there is a positive to leaning into authenticity? What if the changes we have to make are hard, but the outcome is a positive? We find a lot of fear when we what if positives because we don't normally look down there. Fear of change, fear of losing people, fear of having your reputation ruined. There's a lot of fear down there. But I'm telling you, if you continue to deny authenticity to yourself, to the people around you, to these boys out there playing, you will go down in a blaze of glory, in a chaos tornado. Because the energy of the universe, the energy of the collective, evolve or drown. That's all there is. The energy we're dealing with right now, up until the end of November, we will not see again while we walk on this earth. There are cycles closing that are 250 years long, 20 years long, years long. There are cycles closing. We can't fight them anymore. And whether you're an individual, whether you are Carlton, whether you are a fan, we are all on a similar journey. It is just affecting us in different ways. And until they get that balance right, until they release the fear of being authentic, there will be no forward movement until it all burns to the ground. Thank you for watching my rambling. I'd love to hear what you think. Stay weird. Go Blues.